Okay, let's move on to document C. I'm going to have you go ahead and prep the document by writing the question at the top of the page while I read some notes to you from my notes of background information. Again, what I'm reading to is not on your page. These are just my notes. So the question is, education in Sparta, did the strengths outweigh the weaknesses? Prep the document by writing that at the top. This document focuses on the Cryptia, which were considered murder squads in ancient Sparta. Historians are not certain about the origins of the Cryptia. It may have preceded a giant earthquake of 464 BCE and instead been an ongoing attempt to both remove troublemaking helots and provide older Agoge members with an opportunity to develop their tracking and fighting skills. So no one is sure, but they believe that there was a giant earthquake in 464 BCE, which somehow caused chaos, allowing the helots to revolt. And that was the time when this practice of the Cryptia was developed. And then the Spartans just kept the practice going after they had the helots back under control as a way of providing training for the older trackers and the older men in the Spartan army. All right, so back to my notes here. Let's see here. Okay, Plutarch wrote several centuries after the fact. He was obviously unsettled by the idea that the Spartans had trained their young men to do such cruel deeds. We simply don't know if the Cryptia was more about national security or about indiscriminate killing as mere training exercise. Whatever the purpose, it involved secret operations carried out by young men between the ages of 18 and 21. Young men who were not able to do their work in the Cryptia were called tremblers. Tremblers could be expected to be mocked from the community and even from their family. So if there were men who didn't feel comfortable doing the work of the Cryptia, they were outcast and mocked and teased. Historical records suggest that the helots, the word actually means captive, were under constant pressure. Historian Paul Cartledge suggests that the helots were placed under something like martial law, which excused any Spartan who injured or killed a helot from persecution. So these helots were these workers who owned land. They were basically treated very poorly. Their property was taken by the Spartans at will, and the Spartans were allowed to kill them at will. The threat of a helot uprising was real. The earthquake revolt of 464 BCE threatened the Spartan society. A revolt in 370 BCE led to the freedom of a group of Mysian helots who had been in a state of virtual captivity for more than 200 years. It is clear that any decision about training young members of the Agoge was made with one eye on the helots. So the Spartans really were under threat. It was a huge population of helots compared to Spartan warriors that they were trying to keep under control, and they were constantly fearing that the helots might revolt. Let's take a minute and look at the source. This is pretty interesting. Plutarch wrote this document, Lycurgus. He wrote about Lycurgus in 75 CE. So 75 CE, that's a long time ago, thousands of years ago. But is it a primary or a secondary source document? So let's read about Plutarch here. Whoops, sorry about that. Plutarch was an acclaimed Greek historian who wrote Parallel Lives, a series of biographies of famous Greek and Romans. In this excerpt from the biography of Lycurgus, Plutarch writes about the Spartan Cryptia, a kind of secret police or special operations unit. It was manned by senior members of the Agoge who were 18 to 21 years old. The actions of the Cryptia might have served as a training exercise and as a way to keep the helots in line. So Plutarch wrote about this practice hundreds of years after it happened. So you think about that and then determine what your source will be. I'll read the document now, and then I'll allow you to take notes on it when I'm finished. And at intervals, the magistrate, law enforcement officers, would send out the Cryptia, the most sensible of the young I was pronouncing that wrong earlier. Spartiates. I'm having a hard time pronouncing it. Spartiates. Sorry. Into various parts of the country. They carried daggers and as much food as was necessary, but nothing else. By day they scattered into obscure places where they hid themselves and kept quiet. But at night they descended upon the highways and slaughtered any helots they caught. Often they too made their way across the fields and killed the strongest and best of the helots. I believe that cruel acts of this sort were first practiced after the earthquake when the helots rebelled in 464 BCE, devastated their territory, and threatened Sparta with considerable danger. All right, you're going to go back through now and make some notes. You also have the option here in the DBQ Online to play the audio and hear that pronounced correctly, and I apologize about that. And you have your questions to answer at the bottom. Feel free to use my slideshow, but again, use it appropriately. Make your notes first, then peek at mine because I may not have everything, and then one by one, go through the questions and answer them on your own before you reveal what I answered, because that's just my thinking. It's not the one and only true right answer. When you're finished, please screenshot your notes and add it to the Google Classroom and click Turn In so I can see what you've been working on. Thank you guys. I hope you're doing great.